Hello, welcome to Palmerama's Listerama. It's a working title. We of a certain age, or older, or younger, remember animated films being in the second dimension. It wasn't until the spectacle that was Toy Story did 3D animated feature films become a thing. Even then, unless it was Pixar, it really didn't look that good. Sadly, the age of 2D animated feature films is pretty much a thing of the past. Bar a few exceptions, usually independent, gone to the annals of history, relegated to conversations that start with, do you remember that film? Even Disney, Princess and the Frog was their last full 2D animated feature film. And to think it's been, since the recording of this video, 85 years since Disney released their first fully animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And ever since that film was released, Disney has been synonymous with animation. However, over the decades, other studios and artists have released their own animated films to rival or surpass the offerings from the House of Mouse. In this episode, I'm going to show my top 9 non-Disney 2D animated films. They're not really in any particular order. I adore all these films and I've watched them multiple times. But this is the internet, and if you want to say you like more than one thing or something, you have to put it in a list. So, here we go. This is my top 9 non-Disney 2D animated films. Ready? Let's go. Number 9, Secret of Nim. In the 80s, Disney were on a downward spiral, and their animated offerings weren't doing very well. Black Cauldron lost out to the Care Bears movie, and there seemed to be one man to take their place at the top. He was an ex-Disney animator and worked on stuff like The Rescuers, Pete's Dragon, The Fox and the Hound before leaving the studio and setting up his own. That man is Don Bluth, and this is his first feature film. The story follows Mrs. Brisby, a widowed mouse who has to find a cure for her ill son before the farmland where she lives is ploughed and destroyed. Through her adventure, her courage and determination is pushed to the limit. She meets a wide array of characters, such as a demonic cat called Dragon, a clumsy but friendly crow called Jeremy, the typical wise owl, and then of course the Rats of Nim, led by the mystical Nicodemus. I'll leave the plot there. I don't want to get too involved with the stories of these films so I can avoid spoilers and you can enjoy them. I wholeheartedly recommend this film. Every time someone asks what animated film to watch, or even just a film to watch, I will always recommend The Secret of Nim. Animation is truly breathtaking, with fantastic lighting effects for stuff like the amulet and the eyes for the rats, which really help make this film stand out. Animation, I think, is of a standard that not even Disney could reach. Apparently, Don Bluth did suggest this film to Disney, but they thought it was too dark. I think this is one of the reasons why it works so well. With a darker film, you can have darker themes, and stories need darker animation, and you can have much more play with the lighting, especially as the tone of colours change with the mood. Also holds this film together is the characters. They're all well written, especially Mrs. Brisby. She's not perfect, she's always scared, gets battered and bruised, but she keeps going. Not because she wants to, but she needs to for the sake of her family. This is a strong character. Don Bluth himself said, you can show children pretty much anything as long as there is a happy ending. Because unless you show the dark, how can you appreciate the light? That is very true. Number 8, Prince of Egypt. Here we have another film made by ex-Disney employees from a studio that was founded by an ex-Disney executive in Jeffrey Katzenberg, with a story that was also rejected by Disney. Prince of Egypt was the first fully animated production by DreamWorks and is an adaptation of the Book of Exodus and follows the story of Moses, adopted by the Pharaoh after being sent away by his mother to avoid being killed. Grows up in the household and becomes best friends with his stepbrother Ramesses, who later becomes Pharaoh. While away from the city, Moses discovers a burning bush, and the voice of God tells him to free his people from Ramesses and lead them out of Egypt. It's a well-known story. What's the most striking thing about this film is just how cinematic it is. Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted an animated remake of Cecil B. DeMille's 1956 cinematic epic The Ten Commandments, starring Charlton Heston and Yul Brynner. Now, I remember as a child watching this, and I can vividly remember certain scenes because of how epic it was. It's not surprising because it had the biggest sets built for it for any film in Hollywood history. They obviously took that film as inspiration because so many scenes are beautifully lit, shot and composed. The sequence when the plague starts coming is truly cinematic. From when the frogs start coming, the locusts, the plagues, the fire raining down, the difference in colour and light between Ramesses and Moses, it's so well done. Also used state-of-the-art CGI, and it isn't used in an overbearing way. More just to help enhance the animation, which it does, and I wish more films had done this. It also has great songs, a stacked cast, and well-written characters. Pharaoh Seti isn't just portrayed as a typical tyrannous father, and you see his relationship with Moses and Ramesses. The relationship between Moses and Ramesses is so well crafted, showing that despite the scale of the story and setting, at the film's heart, it's a strange relationship between two brothers, and that's what keeps it grounded. Number 7. Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. I was torn between this and Batman Under the Red Hood, as both are fantastic Batman films, let alone just animated ones. Then I realised if it wasn't for Mask of the Phantasm, we wouldn't have Under the Red Hood. Nowadays, it's easy to forget just how influential Batman the Animated Series was, and it brought us new characters which are now mainstays in Batman lore, such as Harley Quinn. The series was so well written despite being aimed at kids, with fantastic animation, voice acting and effects. In Mask of the Phantasm, there is a new cloaked figure going around the underbelly of Gotham City, though unlike Batman, this one is killing mob bosses. Batman is being blamed for them, so the Caped Crusader must go and find out who it is. While for Bruce, an old flame has come back, and this sparks flashbacks for Bruce when his Batman was just beginning. Mask of the Phantasm is everything about the animated series, but amped up. The animation is better, the effects are better, the lighting effects are superb, the music is amazing. You can really tell what the creators can do when given a much bigger budget. Even the acting is top notch. For me, Kevin Conroy is Batman and he is Bruce Wayne. Where usually you get one actor in a film that can do one better than the other, he can do both perfectly. Also, Mark Hamill is just as iconic as the Joker, with probably the most epic Joker laugh ever in a film. What I love about this film is how it gives a story to Batman and Bruce Wayne. How they're separate but then weave through each other at times and come together at the end. It was also the most mature Batman film of the decades, especially when comparing it to Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. If you want a Batman film with an actual mystery, great tension and solid emotional moments, maybe go animated instead of live action. Number 6. An American Tail. The other 80s Don Bluth masterpiece, this time produced by Steven Spielberg. And remember that quote I said in the other film? Yeah, this is a prime example of it. The main character, Fievel, really gets put through the ringer. The story follows little Fievel Malskowitz and his family as they flee their home country of Russia, where they're being persecuted, and travel across the world to America to hopefully find a better life. Of course, this doesn't happen straight away. During the journey, Fievel is separated from his family, and once in New York, he must reunite with them. Like The Secret of Nim, the animation is just stunning, and I would say better than The Secret of Nim. It could be because it had a much bigger budget, and at the time, the biggest budget of an animated film that wasn't made by Disney. The voice work is also well done, with more great written characters. Fievel is a fleshed out child character and not portrayed as a stereotype. This helps you get behind him and will him to find his family. Fun fact, Bluth and Spielberg parted ways after this film, and Spielberg created his own studio, Amblimation. However, it didn't last very long, and so Spielberg and his artists joined up with a Jeffrey Katzenberg and a David Geffen to form a certain company. Well, that company is DreamWorks Animation. Number 5. Tale of Princess Kaguya. It's technically slated as a Ghibli film, but was actually released after the studio temporarily shut down in 2014. Another reason I'm separating it is that the art style is so different and removed from what you'd usually expect for a Ghibli film. This is like a watercolour come to life. The Tale of Princess Kaguya adapts the Japanese folklore story, The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, where a bamboo cutter finds a small girl inside a glowing bamboo shoot. He takes her home and raises her with his wife as their daughter. They find riches and move to the city where the young girl has to mature to learn to become a noble woman. To learn and experience not just the joys that life brings, but the pain as well. It's probably the briefest synopsis on this list, but I want people to go pretty much into it blind so they can get the full emotional experience from this. It is not a film I'd recommend for kids. It is bleak at times and is uncomfortable to watch, but there is so much joy as well and other emotions that you feel. The art style I absolutely love and is definitely my top 2 favourites on this list. It fits the story perfectly and the music complements it sublimely. With Japanese films, you can choose to either read the subtitles or go for the dub version. Usually I go for subbed, but with Studio Ghibli films, the English dub is usually so well translated and really well acted. And The Princess Kaguya is no different. It was also Isao Takahata's last film, and if you don't know who he is, he was one of the co-founders of Studio Ghibli, with a very fitting message. The beauty of the pain and joy in life. It all matters in the end. Number 4, The Iron Giant. I remember reading in primary school a book called The Iron Man, written by Ted Hughes in 1968. The plot is about a giant metal man that crashes down to earth in the English countryside. He befriends a boy called Hogarth and eats scrap metal for sustenance. Then, in Australia, a dragon lands and wants to eat the earth. The Iron Man goes and fights the dragon and defeats it. The dragon turns out to be a star spirit and sings to humanity, creating world peace. When it was released in the States, they changed the title of the book to The Iron Giant because they already had an Iron Man. Now, you may be thinking, well, the first half sounds familiar. That's because it's a loose adaptation of the book, keeping Hogarth and the giant, but changing the setting to 1957 in the US town of Rockwell. Fun fact for how this was made into a film: Pete Townsend of The Who was a big fan of the book and made a musical about it in 1986 and was turned into a brief stage show in 93, which Warner Brothers saw and wanted to turn into a film. That film was released in 1999 and was directed by Brad Bird, who you may know as the director of The Incredibles. Though the musical follows the book and the film has more in common with the book than it does the musical. In the film, after meeting the Iron Giant, Hogarth enlists the help of Dean, a local scrap artist, to stop a federal agent called Kent Mansley and the US military finding and destroying the giant. It's a simple structure and E.T. style story, but it's so much more than that. The connection between Hogarth and the giant is the emotional and moral centre of the film, and the giant's character arc is what truly gets you involved. Vin Diesel gives a simple, understated performance to give the giant humanity, much like he did with Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy.
You are who you choose to be.
Superman.
Now, I absolutely adore this film and proves that there's no real ranking to this list. Plus, it's the only film on this list that I actually have a poster for. I was also lucky enough to meet Chris MacDonald, who plays Mansley, and he very kindly signed it for me. Number 3, Ethel and Ernest. Whoa. Us Brits don't really go for happy endings in our films, do we? Ethel and Ernest is an adaptation of the book of the same name, illustrated by Raymond Briggs, who you may know as the creator and author of the Father Christmas story and The Snowman. Ethel and Ernest is the story of his parents. There's no plot, it's more of a slice of life film. Basically, it's like the first 10 minutes of Up stretched into a whole film. Starting in 1928, from how they first met, through to them getting married, having Sir Raymond Briggs, and until 1971, where, let's say, life didn't have anything more to say. Overall, Ethel and Ernest is just a wonderful film. As with life, there's lots of downs, but there's also lots of ups, and there's plenty of them in the film. What keeps you watching is the characters themselves. They're instantly likeable, and as you follow their life, you are inevitably drawn to them. You feel the sorrow when something bad happens, but join in with the joyous good things. You follow them for over 40 years of their life, engaging with new technology like the telephone, television, etc., and surviving real-life events such as the Blitz, and most importantly, supporting each other. Which what makes the ending feel so... Nope. What makes the characters so endearing is the phenomenal voice acting done by Jim Broadbent and Brenda Blethyn, who really do bring these characters to life. It sounds like a cliche thing to say, but I would use their performance as the example of this saying. Even Raymond Briggs said that when he first heard the recordings, he felt like he had heard his parents again. And you can't get better praise than that. It's the animation that tops it off. Despite being digital, it was still hand-drawn, and over 68,000 frames were created for it. There was a real sense of care about this, which is very noticeable on the screen. Company Lupus kept the original artwork as well as they could. It's simply stunning. They want to be the Aardman of 2D animation, and I wholeheartedly support them.
I could have married a deep sea diver.
Well, why didn't you?
Because I didn't love him.
Number 2, Watership Down. Ah, yes, here we have another British film which really can't be called cheerful. It may star rabbits, but there is nothing cute or cuddly about these critters. The film was released in 1978 and was based on John Adams' book of the same name. The story follows a group of rabbits who leave their current warren after a rabbit called Fiver has a premonition of the land turning red, a man coming to destroy it. The ones that join him include his brother Hazel, must find a new warren to call their own and avoid all the dangers and predators that rabbits can face. The animation style is perfect for the story. It's colourful but in an understated way. There aren't any pastels but taking on a more sombre palette, emphasised by the gorgeous watercolour backdrops. The faces of the rabbits are also cleverly done, keeping a realistic look but adding more human expressions around the eyes so the audience can identify with them. I also like the little touches on the rabbits themselves so you can easily tell them apart. The style of the intro about how the world and animals were created and how they came to be who they are also looks mythical, like people would paint it on pots and plates. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. It's quite a violent film. I saw this when I was fairly young. We had a tape recording of Pinocchio and Watership Down was afterwards. And I remember watching it, not feeling too traumatised by it, and my parents didn't seem to care that I was watching it either. That wasn't the case for everyone, and it has been constantly complained about over the decades. As despite the violence in the film and a swearing bird,
We help you.
in the UK, it's still a U. That aside, it's a gripping story, a faithful adaptation of a book that everyone should read. It's up to you if you let the kids in your life watch it, but if you haven't seen it for yourself, you definitely should. It's complemented by a highly talented voice cast including Richard Briers, Roy Kinnear and John Hurt. And of course, the sublime song Bright Eyes by Art Garfunkel. Ready? Bright Eyes. Number 1. Studio Ghibli. It may be a bit of a cop-out to put the whole studio as a choice instead of an individual film, but when you think of films that have as much imagination, creativity, adventure and magic that aren't Disney films, it's usually a Studio Ghibli film that's chosen, and everyone has their favourites, and there were so many to choose from, so I thought, why not? Plus, it's my list, I can do what I want. Amazingly, even though they're regarded as the Disney of Japan, it's actually John Lasseter we have to thank, who's responsible for bringing the majority of the films to the West. He's a massive fan of the films and is even friends with the co-founder of Studio Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki. and is a massive fan of Miyazaki's work and wanted as many people to see him as possible, getting the best translations and the best voice actors for each film. From the creativeness of Pompoko and Ponyo to the big adventures in Howl's Moving Castle, Princess Mononoke and Castle in the Sky, to the more grounded tales in Kiki's Delivery Service, My Neighbor Totoro and the heartbreaking Grave of the Fireflies, to the sheer cinematic wonder that is Spirited Away. Another reason I put the studio in as a whole choice is that everyone has that special connection with the very first Ghibli film you watch. For me, that was Kiki's Delivery Service. A sprinkle of the fantastical in a grounded story with stunning animation, endearing characters and enchanting music, which for me is when Ghibli is at its best. The animation in all their films is simply jaw-dropping and have always been done in painstaking hand-drawn detail. And long may they continue. Let me know what your favourite Ghibli film is in the comments. And there you have it, my top 2D animated non-Disney films, or however I've titled this, I keep changing it. Why 9, you may ask? Well, if you want to make it a top 10, add yours. I've missed so many films off, and I'm sure one of them may be your favourite, so make it a top 10 of your own. I would like to give some honourable mentions to films that are still brilliant and I do thoroughly recommend, but didn't quite make the list. Land Before Time, another Don Bluth masterpiece and emotional rollercoaster, this time with dinosaurs. When the Wind Blows, another British gut-wrenching animated tale of an old couple surviving a nuclear blast. Persepolis, an autobiographical tale of a girl growing up in pre- and post-revolutionary Iran and living in Europe. Akira, the anime that started the West's love of the genre, still holds up with such detailed animation over 35 years later and is definitely not for kids. Asterix in Britain. There are a fair few animated Asterix films, but this one is my favourite, where the Gaul helps an English relative fight off the Romans. Ernest and Celestine, a French film that kids can definitely watch, about a mouse and a bear that become friends despite living in separate societies that hate the other species. And there you go, plenty of viewing things to pass the time until my next video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, bye bye everybody, bye bye.